Let's transition and let's go to Titletown. Let's talk about the Green Bay Packers and their dominating performance over the Detroit Lions Sunday afternoon in Green Bay on CBS. It was a statement win for the Packers. The Packers beat the Lions 27-13. For the Lions, Jared Goff, he went 31 of 39. He threw for 225 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. For the Packers, Jordan Love had a very efficient game. He went 16 of 22. He threw for 188 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs had 19 carries, 66 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. His 1 touchdown helped him to now score a touchdown in 9 consecutive games for the Green Bay Packers. So, as I watched Lions-Packers Sunday afternoon on CBS, my biggest takeaway was the Micah Parsons effect. Immediately, Micah Parsons made an impact for the Green Bay Packers in this game. And the thing is, when it comes to the Lions-Packers rivalry in the NFC North, for many, many years throughout the Aaron Rodgers era in Green Bay, we always watched the Packers dominate the Lions. The Lions could not beat the Packers in Lambeau for multiple years. I mean, it was times where the Lions would travel to Green Bay and they would get flat out embarrassed by the Green Bay Packers. And so Aaron Rodgers dominated the Lions during his era in Green Bay. But in the Jordan Love era, the Lions have gotten the best of the Packers. And the Packers had not beaten the Lions prior to yesterday since 2021. And over the last 2 years, the Packers were 1-3 in the NFC North. And so Lions fans were telling me and other Packer fans that they were the kings of the NFC North. And I believe that Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur, our head coach, Micah Parsons, Rashawn Gary, Xavier McKinney, I believe those brothers took it very, very personal that the Detroit Lions claimed that they were the new kings of the North. And so yesterday, the Packers, they not only did they beat the Lions, the Packers manhandled the Lions at Lambeau Field for 3 hours in front of a national audience that watched on CBS. They manhandled the Detroit Lions. And let's talk about the Micah Parsons impact. Micah Parsons, in 29 total snaps, he had 3 pressures on 22 pass rushes. And one of Micah Parsons' specific pass rushes, he got so close to Goff and it basically rushed Goff. It was a hurry. He rushed Goff. It was late in the second quarter, right before halftime. The Lions were in the red zone. And Micah Parsons, he rushed the passer. He got so close to Goff, it impacted Goff and it rushed Goff's progression. And Goff threw an interception to Evan Williams. And that was all she wrote for the Detroit Lions. That was all she wrote. So Micah Parsons, there were multiple times in the game where he did not necessarily get a sack, but he impacted and sped Jared Goff up. And it frustrated the Detroit Lions all afternoon long. And I'm looking at Micah Parsons. This is with Micah on the field and with him off the field. With Micah on the field, the Packers had 3 sacks. With him off the field, they had 1 sack. With Micah on the field, the Lions had 2.5 yards per play. With him off the field, they had 4.9 yards per play. With Micah on the field, the Lions had 73 passing yards. With him off the field, they had 127. With him on the field, they were a -2 in rushing yards. With him off the field, they were a 48. They had 48 rushing yards. So the impact from Micah Parsons was felt immediately. And for me, as I'm watching the game in my little old apartment here in Cincinnati, Ohio, literally 7 hours away from Lambeau Field, and I could feel the energy and the aggressiveness from the Packers defense early on in this matchup. Early on, they were flying around defensively. Rashawn Gary, Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, Devontae Wyatt, Lucas Van Ness. The Packers defense was flying around, and the Packers defensive line dominated the Lions offensive line. And they dominated in the trenches. And that's been something that the Lions have done in previous years against the Packers and other teams. The Lions are usually the big bullies on the block. And Sunday afternoon at Lambeau Field, the Packers were the bullies. And they bullied the Lions. And the Packers imposed their will on the Detroit Lions Sunday afternoon for 3 hours. And Micah Parsons is so dominant as a pass rusher, he opens up opportunities for other players on that defensive line for the Packers. Rashawn Gary, he had 3 solo tackles, 4 assisted. Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary also had a sack and a half. Lucas Van Ness had 1 solo tackle, 3 assisted tackles. And Devontae Wyatt, he had 1 solo tackle and 1 sack as well. So Micah Parsons creates opportunities for other players on that Packers defensive front, like Devontae Wyatt, like Rashawn Gary, like Lucas Van Ness, to make plays. And that's the biggest reason why the Packers beat the Lions yesterday. But it wasn't the only reason. Jordan Love was very, very efficient against the Lions Sunday. Jordan Love, he went 16 for 22. He had 188 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. And Jordan Love, this is his career as a starter in week 1. He has a 7-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He averages 231 passing yards per game, 8.3 yards per attempt, and his passer rating is 108.2. He has 2 passing touchdowns in all 3 games in season openers. He's 2-1 in those games. So Jordan Love performs very well week 1 for the Packers. So that's another reason why the Lions lost this game. And I thought offensively, the Packers, they did a tremendous job with their schemes. Matt LaFleur is one of the best play callers we have in the NFL. That touchdown from when Jordan Love threw the touchdown pass to Jaden Reed up the right sideline, that was all Matt LaFleur. That was all Matt LaFleur. He schemed open that play because I believe it was Matthew Golden or it might have been Wicks. But one of the receivers did a slant and the DB in the slot corner had to switch off and Jaden Reed went right up the right sideline. It was enough separation between Reed and the DB for Jordan Love to float the football over the DB's head. Touchdown Packers. And I think that was a critical point in the game. That happened 8 minutes and 34 seconds in the second quarter. And so that was a critical point in the game. And so I'm looking at this Packers team right now. Offensively, you got Jordan Love at quarterback. And I believe Jordan Love is one of the best young quarterbacks we have in the NFL. At running back, you got Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs scored a touchdown in this game. It's his 9th consecutive game with a touchdown. And he is one of the best running backs we have in the NFL. They got Matthew Golden. Now, Matthew Golden in this game, he only had 2 receptions for 16 receiving yards. But he really didn't have to do much because the Packers were able to play efficient football and they played with a lead to where they didn't really have to throw the ball much in the second half. But the young receiving core for the Packers, they have a very, very promising future. with Romeo Dobbs, with Matthew Golden, okay, with Jaden Reed, with Wicks. And at tight end, you got one of the best young tight ends in the NFL and Tucker Kraft. I'm going to go out on the record right now and let it be known that Tucker Kraft will be a top 3 tight end soon in the NFL. Coming here soon to a city near you, Tucker Kraft will be a top 3 tight end in the NFL. In this game, he had 2 receptions for only 16 receiver yards, but he did have the 1 touchdown reception in the first quarter for the Packers. So I'm looking at the Packers offensively. They got Matt LaFleur as their head coach, who's a tremendous play caller, and you still got an elite defense when you got pass rushers like Rashawn Gary and Micah Parsons, who I believe is the best tandem as pass rushers in the NFC. Rashawn Gary and Micah Parsons, when they get to their best, they will become the best tandem as pass rushers in the NFC. And this is the thing about Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons has not even scratched the surface yet for the Packers. He's not even in football shape. You could tell towards the end of the game, he was a little bit out of shape, and he was a little winded. I guarantee you, by October, Micah Parsons will be in football shape. And the Packers already said they're looking at these first 4 games of the season as kind of like a preseason for Micah Parsons. Because in Dallas, when he was going through his contract negotiations / feud with Jerry Jones, he wasn't practicing much, if at all. So this is like a training camp for Micah Parsons. But you look at that Packers defense, Gary, Parsons as your pass rushers with Van Ness as well. And that linebacker, you got Edgerrin Cooper, who I believe will become one of the best linebackers in the NFL, similar to Tucker Kraft's and his, the promising future. Like, the way I look at Tucker Kraft and his ceiling, I look at Edgerrin Cooper on the defensive side of the ball for the Packers in that same way. In the next few years, we're going to look at Edgerrin Cooper, and he's going to be one of the best linebackers in the NFL. And in the secondary, you still got Xavier McKinney. You still got Nate Hobbs, who has not returned back yet from his injury, but you still got Javon Bullard and Keyshawn Nixon. So this Packers team is loaded, and they are the youngest team in the NFL. So they're only going to get better. Now, let's switch sides and talk about the Detroit Lions, right? Yesterday was a Detroit Lions football team that I did not recognize. And I believe one of the reasons why I did not recognize the Detroit Lions yesterday was because we saw the impact of losing 2 of the best offensive and defensive coordinators in the NFL last season in Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And replacing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are John Morton and Calvin Shepard. And I know that John Morton and Calvin Shepard has forgotten more football than I'll ever know. And I know they know the game of football, but they are no Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn. And I felt like watching the Lions-Packers game yesterday, it was almost as if Ben Johnson was 1-0 before he had even coached an NFL game as an NFL head coach. He was already 1-0, and the Vikings are playing on Monday night against the Bears. I'm sorry, the Bears are playing on Monday night against the Vikings, rather. He's the head coach of the Bears. It almost seemed as if Ben Johnson was already 1-0 watching the Lions-Packers game and watching how the Lions looked offensively. And I'm looking at this Lions team offensively. From 2022 to 2024, the Lions, they averaged 29 points per game. They only had 13 against the Packers. They averaged 395 total yards per game. They had 246 total yards against the Packers. They averaged from 2022 to 2024, 258 passing yards per game. They only had 200 passing yards against the Packers. This was all under former offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. And I thought yesterday, Jahmyr Gibbs, he had the stat of the day. He had 10 receptions for 31 receiving yards, and he only had 9 carries for 19 rushing yards. And Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best young running backs we have in the NFL, and the Lions could not run the football yesterday. They could not run the football. And yesterday, for the game, the Lions had 46 rushing yards. 46 rushing yards from the Detroit Lions. Mind you, this is a Detroit Lions team that I believe has a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. At center, you got Graham Glasgow. Left guard, Christian Muhammadi. Left tackle, Taylor Decker. At right tackle, you got Penei Sewell. Now, I know Frank Rasco, I believe that's his name. He's retired. He's their former center. But this Lions offensive line over the last 2 or 3 years have been the best offensive line in pro football, and they got dominated up front by the Packers defensive line. So I cannot emphasize enough the value of having a Ben Johnson and a Aaron Glenn as your offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. John Morton and Calvin Shepard, with all due respect, they are not Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And I thought defensively, the Lions also got punked. They got punked in this game. And I thought the Packers were just a step ahead of the Lions in every facet in that matchup. And Jared Goff, the thing is about Jared Goff, because I believe Jared Goff is a good NFL quarterback. I do not believe Jared Goff is great. But Jared Goff, we're going to find out a lot about Jared Goff because we've seen Jared Goff under Sean McVay lead the Rams to a Super Bowl. We've seen Jared Goff in Detroit with Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator have success. So now I'm interested to see how does Jared Goff perform without Sean McVay and Ben Johnson. And unlike Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or a Jordan Love or a Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff doesn't have mobility at the quarterback position. He's honestly like the last dying breed of the pure, just stay in the pocket quarterback who doesn't have mobility. You notice in the NFL today, in order to be a franchise quarterback, you have to have some mobility. We see it from the Lamar Jacksons, the Josh Allens, even the Jordan Loves and the Jaden Daniels and Justin Herberts of the world. You have to have some mobility at the quarterback position. Jared Goff doesn't have any mobility. And so to me, when you pressure Jared Goff, then he rushes through his progressions and he throws interceptions. And that's exactly what happened late in the second quarter when he threw that interception in the red zone to Evan Williams. Micah Parsons beat the tackle and he forced Jared Goff to rush through his progressions, and Jared Goff threw an interception. And Jared Goff is a stationary target in the pocket. He's not going to have any mobility or manipulate the pocket or, you can't use Jared Goff in that capacity. So if they can't protect Jared Goff, the Lions are going to have some issues moving forward. And next week, they got a big matchup. The Ravens are against the Bears, and we're going to see if the Lions can get it done against the Bears. That's another division game for the Lions. They're home against the Bears, so that's going to help the Lions. But, man, we're going to see what the Lions are made of moving forward. But I believe right now the Green Bay Packers are not only the favorites in the NFC North, but I believe the Packers are now the team to beat in the NFC. The Packers are the team to beat in the NFC. And to me, it's the Packers and the Lions and the Eagles. They are on their own level right now, and then it's everybody else. It's everybody else. Right now, it is the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers, and they are in their own lane. Okay? Make no mistake about it. And I believe that we are on a collision course for a Packers-Eagles NFC Championship game in January. Mark my words. I've seen enough. I don't have to see Vikings-Bears in Chicago on Monday Night Football. I believe the Packers are not only the best team in the NFC North, they are the biggest threats to the Philadelphia Eagles And I believe right now it's the Packers and Eagles and everyone else. And we are on a collision course for a NFC Championship game that features the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles. So those are my thoughts on Lions Packers. It's going to be an interesting season moving forward in the NFC North.